It's been a week of local Democrats center stage, especially two key members of the Massachusetts delegation. First, Senator Elizabeth Warren.
I told Chief Baker that I am sorry that I extended confusion about tribal citizenship and tribal sovereignty.
Just days after she apologized to tribal leaders, Warren made an unannounced appearance at the National Indian Women's Honor Luncheon yesterday, praising Native women and calling on Congress to take more action on Native issues as she tries to put her own controversy to bed. And then there's Warren's colleague, the other senator from Massachusetts, Ed Markey, who might be celebrating a sweeping new proposal to address climate change if it weren't for this.
They introduced a massive government takeover that would destroy our incredible economic gains. They introduced the so-called Green New Deal. It sounds like a high school term paper that got a low mark.
Criticism for Markey's resolution, which, as I mentioned, he's co-sponsoring with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is coming from more than just the president.
I've noted with great interest the Green New Deal, and we're going to be voting on that in the Senate. We'll give everybody an opportunity to go on record and see how they feel.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell calling for a quick vote, betting that some of Markey's fellow Democrats won't want to be put on the spot. So will a rocky rollout make the Green New Deal a no deal before it even gets off the ground? Or has Markey identified the ticket for Democrats in 2020? Joining me are Beth Lindstrom, former State Secretary of Consumer Affairs under Mitt Romney. She ran in the Republican primary to challenge Elizabeth Warren last fall. Good to see you, Beth. Steve Kerrigan is a former candidate for Lieutenant Governor, former CEO of the Democratic National Convention, and of President Obama's inaugural committee. Steve, it's good to see you, too. Let me start with you. We all know of the Native American travails, for lack of a better expression. The latest in this repair effort is she goes to this luncheon. By the way, she gets a standing ovation. Yep. Almost can't get out of the room. People want to spend. Are small acts like these that build up, are they the way, we shouldn't say out of this, but are they the way at least to mute this criticism?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, President Obama had his Jeremiah Wright moments early on. He chose and I think did well, a large speech to try to sort of tamp down it all. He waited until, I think, September, October of 07 to give that speech.
It was actually March of 08. But,
March of 08, so even later, yeah. So she, I think, by doing these small acts, and she had Deb Haaland, who is the new Native American congresswoman who introduced her, who said she's a great friend of the Native communities. I mean, these small acts are really going to do a lot to tamp it down. On the other side, the president is taking big stages and criticizing her on Twitter, making references to Trail of Tears. I mean, he is really doing a good job of helping her with that base to support her against him rather than criticize her.
Let's go to one of those big stages. This was the speech in March of 2008 that the president gave in Philadelphia, attempting to get the whole Jeremiah Wright thing behind him. Here's President Obama.
We've heard the implication that my candidacy is somehow an exercise in affirmative action. On the other end, we've heard my former pastor, Jeremiah Wright, use incendiary language to express views that rightly offend white and black alike. I suppose the politically safe thing to do would be to move on from this episode and just hope that it fades into the woodwork. But race is an issue that I believe this nation cannot afford to ignore right now.
Beth, if you're giving advice to the senator, and I don't think you will be, but if you were, which is the better approach? The incremental thing that we were describing, a la this lunch, I'm not trying to minimize it at all, or does she have to give that defining speech in an attempt to just put the whole thing behind her, a la Obama and Wright?
I think she's tried to deal with this. And this is the thing. This is part of her story. I mean, she's running for president, and the people who don't know her, she has to introduce herself. And this is always going to be part of her story.
So how does she deal with that without having it sink her candidacy?
You know, probably bit by bit, and maybe the big speech. But the point is, it's part of her story. And all the other candidates, there's very many of them, I'm sure will keep it going, plus our president.
Can we stay on strategy just for a minute? Speaking of our president, the first time that Senator Warren was in Iowa, I don't believe she even mentioned Donald Trump by name. She took a whole different tact on her most recent trip. This is the soundbite you've seen about 10,000 times. Make it 10,001.
By the time we get to 2020, Donald Trump may not even be president. In fact, he may not even be a free person.
Which is the right, clearly partisan Democrats. Hello, Steve Kerrigan. Love that kind of moment. But she's got to appeal to the primary voters and then hopefully someday to final voters. Is that okay, or is that not? I mean, no, Donald Trump would do that, clearly.
This is part of her shtick. This is part of the, the hostility, because if she's not hostile to the president, then she doesn't rile up her base. And so she has to continue with that, and she's good at. She does it a lot. And he does it back to her. And so that's part of what we expect from both of them.
When Beth just said he does it back to her, I mean, it seems one of the ways to separate yourself from the pack, which I think she's done pretty well by getting in first and by having an agenda, it seems, at least the left-leaning part of the Democratic Party, and maybe even the core of the Democratic Party likes, is if you engage the president and every morning you wake up and the president's calling you Pocahontas or engaging you do separate yourself from the pack in a really serious way. No? So take him on.
Why not? First of all, in any Democratic room in Iowa or New Hampshire at this phase of the campaign, you criticize Donald Trump, say he's not going to be president anymore, he's going to get impeached or go to prison, you're going to get huge applause lines. And nothing feels better at this point of a campaign than huge applause lines in Iowa and New Hampshire.
But you said this point of the campaign. Is there not a point? I mean, I, for one, am so sick of the partisan
you're done with the campaign
dysfunction.
Already.
And I love the fact that this gang of 17 actually came up a Republican Democratic plan. It was a fabulous moment, and I hope it happens. But there is going to come a point when people are going to get tired of this, even if the base loves it now, aren't they? What, does she just shift gears at that point?
Well, if she's doing what she needs to, everyone's got to run the campaign that they need to run. And at this point, she can get press and she can get donations, and all small dollar donations, by criticizing Donald Trump directly and naming him. I would prefer we have an entire campaign focused on the issues and what the Democratic candidates are going to do for the country. We're not having that, and right at this point, you've got to do anything you can to stay in front in this pack of what could grow to be 17 or 18
So you think she'll be chanting "lock him up" tomorrow? Do you think?
Absolutely.
In any case, can we switch to the other Senator, Beth, if you don't mind? Sure. This is both Senator Markey and probably the highest profile freshman in the history of Congress, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when they announce the so-called Green New Deal. Here they are.
Never in our history have the interests of all Americans been so united on a single issue: climate change.
Climate change and our environmental challenges are one of the biggest existential threats to our way of life.
Yeah, I love Mitch McConnell's strategy, I have to say. This is the guy who would not allow a vote on Merrick Garland, nor even a hearing on a Supreme Court nominee from a president. He goes on, in addition to that soundbite, he tweets the following: "We're going to vote in the Senate, see how many Democrats want to end air travel and cow farts." Based upon a in part, a mischaracterization that in part is Ocasio-Cortez's fault because of that infamous Q&A. But fair or unfair, this does put the Democrats in a box. They would have to go on record, and some of them probably don't want to, right?
Absolutely, and that's why it's happening. But, the scary thing is that our junior senator, who was elected first when I was entering high school, what real life experience does he have with retrofitting a business or something like that?
What real life experience did Ted Kennedy have, who's arguably the greatest senator who ever lived? He spent his life there, too.
I think what I'm seeing is that you're jumping on the bandwagon of AOC.
He has been on climate stuff since the 70s, before anybody, when we had the first energy crisis.
Before she was born, actually.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, much before she was born, yeah. And he has been a leader. And look, this is a resolution. This isn't a law. This is a resolution that states principles and values that both of they share, and I know a majority of Americans share.
We had Senator Markey on the radio with us today, Markey and I. Here's a little bit of how he responded to the whole issue of the vote, because it's pretty tough to say, by the way, we don't want to vote right now when Democrats have been screaming for votes on so many other things. Here's Senator Markey's position.
By calling this vote, the Republicans want to block the public hearings, block the expert testimony, block the historic debate. But most of all, they want to block this movement of activists and advocates who are organizing around the issue.
Let me make an analogy, if I can. I mentioned to the senator today on the radio that when Markey and I used to take calls on the Affordable Care Act, didn't matter whether you were for it or against it, nobody knew what it was. Everybody who called in and said, "I love it," had the facts wrong. It seems to me there's that kind of danger here. Obviously, that became law, so that was a good outcome for its proponents. But death panels became what people knew early on, even though there weren't any. how do they fix this problem that it seems, at least early on, Donald Trump, a mistaken Q&A out of Ocasio-Cortez's office, and Mitch McConnell are defining for the American people what this far-ranging resolution on climate change, full employment, infrastructure is doing?
This is where the split Congress, the split power in Congress comes into play. If both houses of Congress were controlled by Republicans right now, they'd each have a vote really quickly, and we would be not talking about this again for a long, long time. But the House of Representatives, under Speaker Pelosi, I am confident will conduct those hearings, conduct real briefings of the American people. I mean, we had 15 months of hearings on the Affordable Care Act, and I agree with you. Still today, most people don't understand the intricacy of it. This is a life-changing piece for all parts of industry and the country, and can really have a huge impact on us, and we should have Congress doing that, and that's what the Democratic House of Representatives is going to do. Mitch McConnell does want to silence this thing. He wants to box Democrats in for 2020, but he wants to take it off the table for Republicans in 2020, and we're going to be able to keep it alive in the Democratic House.
Does it box Democrats in 2020? Because, if you were to poll the American people, as has been done on a lot of the elements, they love the elements. It's sort of like the Affordable Care Act, but the big thing is sort of scary.
I was just going to say that, you can't, take a broad brush to like every Republican doesn't want to focus on climate change.
I meant Mitch McConnell.
But
which is the Republican who decides
politics,
stuff.
and so of course it's tit for tat, and because of our polarization of our politics right now, this is what's happening, which is really too bad because we do need to do something big. But I think when you look at the four corners of that document, it was a little in crazy town, and but we need to do. Well, that's what Klobuchar said today, or Senator. So
who is iffy about this, by the way?
Right. So I think you're when you see what's going to happen on the Democrat side as all of these candidates start to line up because it's early, where are they going to position each other and how they're going to fall?
By the way, it's not so early. New Hampshire could be in December
of
this
year. Right, but there's a long road before
that
happens. So
we got to go down that road right now because we're done. Goodbye, Steve Kerrigan. Nice to see you. Beth Lindstrom. Thanks so much. Really appreciate both of you.